Why every black person should praise these white Republican Christian men. Hello, everybody. I'm Jim McCotter. It was the Southern Democrats that demanded black slavery to maintain their plantations. As a result, the Republican Party was founded by abolitionists to abolish slavery, and Abraham Lincoln was their first president. Then there was the Civil War, technically over state rights, but practically so the Southern Democrats could maintain their plantation slaves. The Southern Democrats lost the war. The blacks were now free. So the Southern Democrat states did the next best thing they could do to keep the blacks in a new type of bondage, political bondage. The Southern Democrats immediately started setting up state laws in the South which were called the Jim Crow laws. These laws did two things. One, practically, they kept the blacks as second-class citizens and destitute to have continued cheap plantation laborers. Two, they impeded the blacks from being able to vote and unable to change the Jim Crow Southern state laws, thus continuing to be able to have cheap black labor for their plantations. Finally, with the media exposing what the Southern Democrats were doing with their unjust Jim Crow laws and the strong Republican opposition, in the 1960s, the federal government annulled the Southern Democrat state laws with federal civil rights laws for all American citizens. This put the blacks in full equal footing with the Southern Democrats and all others. However, at this time, most blacks had little understanding about the whole political system, or even that it was only one political party, the Democrat Party, that had been their enemy from the beginning. Now the Democrat Party had to do something dramatically and immediately before the majority of blacks understood and would unite with Republicans to put the Democrats out of power indefinitely. The Democrats could not any longer keep blacks from voting, so the only alternative was to, quote, pay, end quote, blacks to vote for them. In other words, entitlements, welfare, or, quote, give them cake, end quote. That would do it. Simultaneously with the new civil rights laws, the Democrat Party's new strategy was to immediately transform itself from being enemy to the new, quote, compassionate party, the primary party for big government, entitlements, and welfare. Give the poor blacks enough to survive, in virtually keeping them Democrat welfare-dependent slaves, the Democrats' new permanent slave voting bloc. This was the Democrats' big bait and switch. Now the blacks knew they had been slaves and then oppressed with the Jim Crow laws for many years after that. This was obviously a highly raw subject to blacks. They would naturally feel hostility for whoever was responsible for their slavery, and then not even having full civil rights for a long time after that. The Democrat Party knew this could be their end unless they could divert and deflect the past slavery and Jim Crow laws off of them. This is where the indoctrination started. America was bad, and all its founding fathers were bad. In fact, some of them were even slaveholders. The new makeover Democrat Party now became the transformed compassionate party, and America became the scapegoat. This, of course, all played right into the communists, leftists, and socialists who truly did want to blame traditional America for everything. They want to totally destroy America and all its Christian influence. So the Democrats were glad to have the leftists join in their chorus in making America the boogeyman. But the leftists now have completely taken over the whole Democrat Party. The Democrat Party knew it could not survive if the majority of blacks ever fully understood their true history. Today, the vast majority of blacks still do not know Most blacks still love the Democrats and receiving their welfare crumbs, though many are starting to flee their Democrat plantations. But Joseph Goebbels would have been amazed at how thoroughly the Democrats overnight revised their image and indoctrinated the whole nation. However, in thinking of true America, here are a few things that are seldom, if ever, mentioned. Number one, this does not justify the Democrats enslaving the blacks in any way, but prior to the Civil War, at that time in history, slavery was commonplace all over the world and had been since the beginning of time and still is today in many countries. Two, despite the slave-supporting Democrats, America was an amazing nation, being one of the first nations in the world to outlaw slavery, and only because America was so much of a Christian nation. Three, the abolition movement to free the slaves was fundamentally a Christian movement. Four, and over 300,000 Americans, mostly white Republican Christian men, died in freeing all the black people. Five, no nation in the world other than America has ever made such a great unselfish sacrifice for the benefit of a minority race or for any race. Most don't think or even know about the above, much less praise America and the white Republican Christian men for their great sacrifice in freeing all black Americans. If anybody should appreciate and honor America, and most specifically those white Republican Christian men, every black American should. Biblically, no later generation is to pay any reparations. The Bible says that in Ezekiel 18, verses 14 through 20. But if when reparations should have been paid, those most worthy would have been the 300,000 American families of mostly white Republican Christian men who died getting freedom for the blacks. Black Americans now happen to live in the greatest nation in the world, where even blacks from all over the world are clamoring to get here. Not one black African nation has ever done so much for black people as has America, and especially those white Republican Christian men. Anyone who recoils at this refuses to accept the fact of history, or only wants to perpetuate their own self-serving myths. Every person who reads our history knows how the Marxist Democrats, college professors, and legacy media have joined with the Democrats in propagandizing black people since the 60s and overwhelming them with their bait and switch strategy. If 300,000 mostly white Republican Christian men died for what was right and true during America's Civil War, certainly every white and black Christian man living ought today to proclaim what is true. Only one side is soon going to win this new civil war. Proverbs 25:2 says, "To search out a matter is the glory of kings."